Broadcasting from the Cass Corridor in Detroit, it's the Metro, WDET's daily news and culture show. I'm Robin Vincent.
And I'm Tia Graham. Today on the program, it's a new year, so we're thinking about setting ambitious goals and building new habits.
We'll sit down with someone who studies human behavior and how to make all those resolutions finally stick.
And we'll open up the phone lines to learn what your resolutions are and which ones keep coming up year after year.
This and more. But first, every day we're exposed to chemicals that can affect our health. Endocrine disrupting chemicals are of particular concern. They're in everything from plastics and pesticides to personal care products. And they can alter how our hormones behave and lead to serious health problems and disease. Professor Christopher Cassotis studies these chemicals closely in his lab at Wayne State University. His work is helping us to better understand how endocrine disrupting chemicals affect metabolic issues like obesity, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. Now, the hope is that research like this can change policies and regulations so we can begin to truly limit our exposure and lead healthier lives. And I should mention, Professor Cassotis was recently awarded the prestigious recognition of Outstanding Young Investigator for his creativity and dedication and his commitment to mentoring the next generation of scientists. Professor Cassotis, congratulations on the award and welcome to the Metro.
Thanks so much for having me.
So first, could you explain what an endocrine disruptor even is?
Yeah, absolutely. So we think about our hormones as kind of the chemical messengers of the body. So they're essentially the chemicals that are being released by different tissues in the body, traveling through our bloodstream, reaching some target in the body and causing a biological effect. So endocrine disruptors are essentially chemicals that can trick our body into thinking that they're the natural hormones. So they can either mimic a hormone, and so they can drive a biological effect as if the body was encountering the natural hormone. And they can also block how the hormones would normally act. So they can, we think of how a hormone acts as kind of a lock and key. So hormone binds to a specific, what we would call a hormone receptor in the body. So that's the lock. And the hormone can turn the key and go through the door. These chemicals can often kind of insert into the lock, but not quite turn it.
Okay.
So ultimately kind of just disrupting how hormones normally act.
I'm wondering what sparked your interest in these, what I would call very insidious chemicals.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had kind of a strange journey through my undergraduate training, but I took an animal physiology course early on where the professor teaching that course was very interested in these chemicals, and really kind of her passion just kind of, she showed us a documentary, I remember, that talked about one of the early examples of these chemicals in the environment, Lake Apopka in Florida, where Fish and Wildlife had gone down to this lake because they had seen a complete population collapse in the American alligator. Only to find that the male alligators had estrogen levels that were generally what the females should have. And both the males and the females were completely infertile. And this turned out to be chemicals, primarily pesticides, that acted like estrogens. So kind of tricked the body into thinking that they were the natural estrogens in the body. Rendering these animals completely infertile and causing a population collapse. And this was just a wild thought to me, and really captured my interest, and I've stayed with it since then.
And we know that this infertility that is happening because of endocrine disruptors, that's happening in humans as well. There's recent research that points to exactly that, correct?
Absolutely. So there's really good data on sperm count. There's been a consistent decline in sperm count over the last several decades. This was, something that I think some people questioned for a long time, given that a lot of these data come from fertility clinics, but really Shauna Swan has pioneered a lot of the work on this, and has really shown conclusively in the last few years that this is a real problem. We've seen a consistent decline over decades. Every year it gets a little bit worse. And it's not just sperm counts, right? It's all of female reproductive health, all of male reproductive health, even when folks go to assisted reproductive technologies like IVF, exposure to some of these chemicals has been shown to result in poor IVF outcomes, poor implantation success, all of these things. So there's a large problem here for sure.
So tell me this, how did we get to this point where these chemicals have become so ubiquitous?
Yeah, so really the 1970s, we saw this big shift towards industrial chemical production. And really it was this world of, life is better with chemistry, right? We had this explosion in industrial chemical production, and chemicals started to pervade our everyday lives. And I think people don't even realize the extent to which that has happened. But the chemists that are what we would call exposure scientists, who are really interested in what we're exposed to on a regular basis, the average American home has, thousands of chemicals that you are interacting with on a regular basis. Often this is occurring at very low concentrations. But unfortunately, the entire regulatory structure in this country was never set up to evaluate health effects like that, right? So toxicity testing in this country occurs by starting at a very high dose, finding a dose that's toxic, and walking down the concentrations to a dose where they don't see an effect on lethality, like gross toxicity or often cancer outcomes. Unfortunately, these reproductive health outcomes, these metabolic health outcomes, these often occur at far lower concentrations. And the regulatory structure is such that once they find that concentration that isn't causing death or cancer or some other, more severe outcome, they stop testing. They just assume that concentrations below that are safe.
So it's a low threshold, you'd say.
Say that again?
So it's a low threshold.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm wondering how different the regulatory structure in the U.S. is in comparison to other countries.
Yeah, absolutely. So the European Union, for example, takes a more precautionary approach. So they regulate based on hazard. So the United States, you have to both show evidence of harm and exposure at concentrations that should result in that harm. In the European Union, having a hazard associated with a chemical is sufficient to regulate. So they have a much more protective approach towards human health. It's certainly not perfect, but it's much better than what we're doing here.
Why can't we just ban these chemicals in the U.S.? What is stopping that from happening?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, unfortunately, the folks who try to go completely plastic free in their life find that it's extremely difficult to live in America and not encounter these products, right? We live in a culture such that we expect there to be fresh food available, quick food options all the time. Lunch that they can microwave that's been frozen in a tray, all of these options. And really, they rely on this chemical world that we've built. And so it becomes very difficult to shift away from them. Certainly, there are many easy steps that people can take to reduce exposures, but, avoiding them completely is very difficult.
You're listening to the Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vinson alongside Tia Graham. We're speaking with Professor Christopher Cassotis about his research that explores endocrine disrupting chemicals and their impacts on human health. Now, Professor Cassotis, in your lab, you primarily focus on how endocrine disrupting chemicals affect metabolic issues. So that would be things like obesity, diabetes, and cardiovascular health. How hazardous are these chemicals to metabolic health?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got interested in this, I guess, a few years ago now, studying how, so the process of, all of these body processes, things like how much, fat tissue we have in the body, how our pancreas responds. All of these things are regulated by this complex interplay of hormones. And so, given that these are all hormonally regulated, they are thus susceptible to exposure to these chemicals. And so, one of the things that we study a lot in my lab is how fat cells develop. And we can expose stem cells, precursor fat cells to different environmental chemicals, and we can see whether, these chemicals are able to either commit cells to become fat cells or push fat cells to become what we would think of as a, mature white fat cell, which is this large centralized lipid droplet and a displaced nucleus. And we find that lots of environmental chemicals can do this. They can both shift this, multipotent, these stem cells that are able to develop into fat cells or bone cells or muscle cells. They can shift them down this fat pathway. And then they can, really make them, they can both proliferate those fat cells and make them much larger.
So this is one explanation when people say, why are Americans overweight? Why are they so unhealthy? It could be one of the reasons our exposure to endocrine disrupting chemicals.
Absolutely.
Oh, hey there, doggy. How can we try to limit our exposure to these chemicals?
Yeah, so there's some really simple steps that we can take to limit exposure. So one of the big things that we say is limiting plastics where possible, but definitely heating in plastic, we say please stay away from. So microwaving food or beverages in plastic, we recommend you never do. Not cleaning plastics in the dishwasher, avoiding preferentially. I find that asking people to avoid certain plastics can get a little confusing, but 3, 6, and 7. So on the bottom of any plastic product, you're going to have that code with the number. So 3, 6, and 7 are best to be avoided.
3, 6,
but
and
I would
7.
just say,
okay.
Yeah, just avoid plastics as much as you can, right? But really, if you're going to use them, never hot is my message.
Okay. Well, sorry, you were going to say one more thing there on that.
Yeah, I was going to say, so one of the big things that's been getting a lot of attention recently is these PFAS, these what they're calling forever chemicals, and these are in a lot of your nonstick cookware. And so researchers are finding there is no safe level of exposure to these chemicals. And so we recommend people use cast iron or stainless steel. I know cast iron can be a little complicated. Stainless steel is very easy to use, but definitely getting rid of those nonstick pots and pans.
Professor Cassotis, in the last 30 seconds that we have, I'm wondering also about stricter regulations. I'm thinking back to the Trump administration's last time in office, how it rolled back many rules on toxic chemicals, and President-elect Trump has pledged to do that again. So it has me wondering, how essential then will it be for states and local municipalities to step in?
Yeah, I think even more important than it already was, right? We've seen a very slow regulatory system at the federal level in the United States, even with Democratic presidents. And we've been seeing in the last decade or two much more action on the state level. California's taken a lot of great steps to better regulate chemicals, and California is such a huge market that it really helps protect the rest of the United States. But states have a really important role here, and I think as researchers, we have a role to better communicate our findings with state regulators to hopefully help better protect residents.
Professor Christopher Cassotis leads the Cassotis Lab at Wayne State University, where he focuses on endocrine disrupting chemicals. Professor Cassotis, congratulations on your award, Outstanding Young Investigator. And thank you so much for joining the Metro.
Thanks so much for having me.
It's the Metro on 101.9 WDET FM from the WDET newsroom. 2024 was the warmest year on record in Southeast Michigan. The National Weather Service has been keeping track of conditions for 150 years. The agency says last year's average daily temperature was almost 3.5 degrees above normal and slightly higher than the previous record set in 2012. 4 of the last 5 years rank among the 12th warmest since 1874, and right now we're feeling the cold weather, so we're not really understanding that, but it's happening. It is happening.
You love that cold weather, do you?
I despise
Every time
it.
you walk into the station, you just look exuberant, and you have the right amount of just rosiness. And
I love the people who love the snow, and I love the people who love the cold, but I am not that person. I don't love it.
that was a great way to qualify that.
Yeah. I love those people, but
You're not one of them. No, that is clear to me. Coming up at 11, we're 1 week into the new year. Have you managed to stick with your resolution or resolutions? Did you make one at all? We'll share some of our most stubborn New Year's resolutions and take your calls with an expert on how small things can add up to big changes. The number is 313-577-1019.
Coming up next, Detroit's homicide numbers hit new historic lows in 2024. We'll talk about how that happened right after the break. Stay right there.
Welcome back to the Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent.
And I'm Tia Graham. And we all know how the rest of the country has talked about the city of Detroit. Crime has plagued our city and overshadowed much of the good work and good things that are happening here. But some recent numbers signal a shift. The Detroit Police Department released its year-end crime report for 2024. It's reporting the lowest number of homicides since 1965. It's the second consecutive year homicides have dropped in Detroit. Meanwhile, violent crime overall dropped 7% and property crime dropped 3% in comparison to the previous year. Now, city officials point to a relatively new community violence intervention program as the reason why. In 2023, the city partnered with 6 community groups to reduce gun violence. Each group is responsible for 3 to 5 square mile zone in the city, and with the city's blessing and COVID relief dollars to fund it, the organizations got to work. Since the program began, the city has reported lower crime numbers in those targeted areas. Zoe Kennedy is the executive director of Force Detroit. Zoe and Force Detroit are one of the partnering organizations doing this work. I want to say thank you so much, Zoe, for joining us on the Metro.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So, Zoe, as we just mentioned at the top, Force Detroit's work with the city is more recent, but your organization has been on the ground doing the work for a much longer time. Can you talk a little bit about the organization, how it got started, and for folks who aren't familiar, where's your zone?
Yes, our organization was started 10 years ago by our founder, Alea Harvey Quinn. She's a woman who is the child of 2 Black Panthers, and her father was incarcerated for 27 years, and she experienced something as a child of a man and a woman that experienced cycles of violence in the community. And we are in the 48228 Franklin Park and Warrendale community, also known in the philanthropic space as the Cody Ruich area.
Yes, indeedy. That is that's where I grew up. So I always love when we have you guys on the show because of the things that I've been able to see within that community, especially over the last 10 years, like you say, the growth, the development that's coming in small businesses and just the people in the community thriving there. So it's due to the work that Force Detroit's been doing, the Cody Rouge community group there as well. Yes. So, props to you all who have been on the grounds. But you all develop relationships with the community, which allows you to work closely with the residents and allows you all to have these relationships. Can you talk about developing and nurturing these relationships throughout that area?
Yes. We started out with a strategy of doing participatory research with the community, figuring out what the community needs were. We try to stay focused on the social determinants of health. In that, to address the problem, we had to deal with the population that was closest to the problem, or the population that they said was the problem. Even in that, as we go forward, we don't get here without those individuals who are struggling with this deciding not to engage in perpetuating cycles of violence. Also, I like to say we look to engage, and we are engaged in our community beyond just dealing with those individuals who are impacted by violence. The whole community is, even when it comes to the businesses, the homeowners, making sure we practice cooperative economics, making sure our ecosystem, our philanthropic ecosystem, our grassroots ecosystem, that our dollar circulates throughout our ecosystem to have a thriving, sustainable community. And I'm going to tell you why. Because you talked about those dollars, those American Rescue Plan dollars. Well, those American Rescue Plan dollars run out this year. And if there's nothing sustainable there for these organizations who have came into these communities, as other organizations have come in the past, that funding won't be there, so you won't have that same level of engagement. So we have to make sure this year that we're advocating for sustainable resources. It's a bill, 4605, 4606, that was supposed to be voted in the legislation that will fund our work in perpetuity. That means it will fund our work as long as Michigan is a state, and we will be able to operate and function like other departments and agencies in public safety.
And that's the perfect segue, because my next question and my next add-on was going to be about, number one, you guys have to have something that's going to maintain you economically after funds run out. This is something that you guys are going to have to worry about. But as well, worrying about the connection with the Detroit Police Department and connecting with them and fostering that relationship as well, especially as you go on and you want to expand your presence within the city of Detroit, making it a more permanent presence within the city of Detroit. Can you talk about fostering that relationship with the Detroit Police Department?
Yes. One, we have to maintain a healthy balance. It has to be proximity is a thing. So our work, we can allow the relationship with that department to compromise our work, and we can allow our relationship with community to compromise their work. So it's a balance of respect. We respect DPD. DPD actually allows us or supports our strategies. So they're not going to get involved or interrupt in our methods, and they also offer support. They're part of our methods at times. If we're doing a block party or something, we will call for that deterrence. Like, man, we need a squad car out here just to deter any type of conflict. Even though we have our relationships, you can never be too safe. And oftentimes, we're not the only ones in the community. So our elders, they trust DPD. And we want to foster that trust because when it comes to constitutional law enforcement, I think our city does an outstanding job at it. Chief Bedison or interim Chief Bedison is known in the community, like the grassroots community. He's a community chief. It's not like it is in other cities. So even when it comes to the population we serve, they understand that when we are around law enforcement, we are at the table because we have legitimate power in being community leaders.
Mm-hmm. And before, we transition here a little bit, but I do want to build on this, that having that voice, having that seat at the table, and the importance of bringing the community's voice to these tables, and then the importance, like you said, of balancing that all out, because you have some folks who are very much in support of the Detroit Police Department. You have some folks who are just staunchly against the Detroit Police Department. Mm-hmm. So how do you balance all of those feelings and emotions out when you're trying to take this information to the seats of these tables?
When you're operating in integrity, you have to be unapologetic about that, right? I'm a man who, in my younger years, was involved in engaging in violence, and I understand what type of impact it has on community, and I understand my lens isn't the only lens. I'm not the only community member or community leader. So some people may have a different stance and a different approach. Our thing is to educate community on its multiple approaches towards responding and addressing what they're seeing in community. And you have to respect that as long as it's not harming community. I can't go argue with someone about how they respond and expect someone to embrace or acknowledge how I respond to it or address it. So my thing is, one, operating integrity, right? We're not going to compromise our credibility. We're not about to tell on nobody. We're not trying to solve nothing. We are there to encourage you to do better with your life, discourage you from harming another community member, and to offer or give you access, further access, greater access to resources that can add to your quality of life. So it's about standing in integrity and being unapologetically committed to community, not committed to nobody's agenda, not committed to no one's trauma, not committed to anyone's perspective of how they feel. No, we want what's best for a community, and we understand our role in community. We are that space, that alternative. We are the ones that you could say, man, I can trust them. I could talk. They're not going to do this. Police are held to a certain standard. When they see certain stuff, they held to a certain standard. And you need someone that's held to a strict code, right? I'm not pulling anybody over.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm not about to do that. So you need people to do that, but you need people who will just spend all day with someone, building that relationship, to have influence, to intervene in conflicts. Yeah.
This is the Metro on 101.9 WDET. I'm Robin Vincent alongside Tia Graham. We're speaking with Zoe Kennedy about his organization, Force Detroit, which works to keep Detroit communities safe. We're talking especially after Detroit police announced a historic drop in homicides. Now, Zoe, you mentioned being engaged in violence when you were younger. You were incarcerated for 14 years for committing crimes. Now you're doing this vital work. What took you on that path, and how did you change course?
What took a lot of people in our community on that path, when you study your history, and I have, like I said, I'm unapologetic in it. It was stuff put into our community, and our community leaders were killed in the past. The drug epidemic put me on that path. My father being addicted to drugs, being an academic scholar, working for Atlas Oil, but he partied, and cocaine was socially acceptable, so was crack. Crack ravaged our community. I began to sell drugs at 11 because I wanted money. My mother was a single mother because our fathers were addicted to drugs, and she was taking care of 4 children, doing the best she could. And you know, once a young man reaches 11, 12, they want finer things. They begin to look at others and compare themselves to others once they're in school. Insecurities kick in, and if you haven't had the development for emotional intelligence, a lot of in our schools, we need that. Like, you got physical education, but you don't have emotional education K through 12, and we are bombarded and overwhelmed with trauma and obstacles living in these communities. So the crack era created this behavior. Media created this behavior of ultimately a young man wants to exercise masculinity. If we have visual depictions of aggression as masculinity, this is all we know. And what led me out of that path was those resources were provided once I was in prison. I get cognitive behavioral therapy once I'm in prison to get out. I run into male mentors who will spend all day with me because we're in a cell in prison. And I'm the type of individual, if I believe something, I'm going to stand on it. So knowing the truth about my history, knowing the truth and understanding psychology, sociology, and philosophy allows me to be able to think outside the box. I love it. I could not behave the same once I knew the truth because my core principles changed.
And now you're trying to bring those resources to young men so that they don't have to be in prison to access them. Can you talk about teaching young men to develop that kind of emotional intelligence? Yes.
So in my trainings and some of the techniques that I use, I know visuals are a thing. We know humans respond to this. I operate using Maslow's hierarchy of basic needs. It worked when we was living life of crime. You give them shoes, you give them somewhere, some food, some money. You meet those needs and you gain influence and a person actualizes. And sometimes when you're on negative, they self-actualize into a gangster or they self-actualize into someone, a convict that may lock us up.
That's the highest point on Maslow's hierarchy, is self-actualization.
Exactly. Like you meeting those needs of safety. I may give you a firearm to keep your... Well, you can do the same thing in a positive way. You meet those needs of safety. I'm going to put you in a safe environment, or I'm going to make this environment safe. I live in the community that I service. I live right down the street from the house that my grandmother purchased when she moved in the community. So you engage the young men and young women and expose them to a different perspective of life because it's going on and it's there. We're going to expose you to entrepreneurship. We're going to expose you to some religion if you want to. We're going to expose you to politics because our people, and what I mean by our people, I mean impoverished in our communities. Our people have to be in every space so that we are represented in every space. We are not, what I'm teaching my community or sharing my community, we are not here to be divided based on what we've been indoctrinated with or what we've embraced, ideology. We are here to have an agenda based on the best interests of all of us. Because something we can all agree to, we want to live and be safe.
My last question for you, Zoe. You are the newly appointed executive director of Force Detroit. Mm-hmm. You're going to be leading this organization, and I'm wondering how it felt for you in this new role and given all the work you've been doing to learn the news about this historic drop in homicide rates in Detroit.
Yes. So, being totally honest, before I came here, the reason why I wear my glasses a lot, but the reason why I have my glasses on, I called our founder, Leah Harvey Quinn. I became extremely emotional this morning. And I told her, no one believed in me like you. She built an organization to fund the field and fund the work. And she got me 3 weeks out of prison, educated me, built me up, and left me an organization she founded and built. I was a volunteer. So these numbers have done to me personally, they have edified me. She has edified me. This is what happens when people in the community see magic over monsters. Where else would I be able to be me? Zoe. I don't have to say I'm Mr. Kennedy, and there's nothing wrong with that. And be in spaces and recognized and acknowledged. And that's what I want for the rest of my brothers and sisters. I'm not the thing or the person or the only person that should be focused on. She is not the only person that should be doing this. We as a community need to lift our people up. And I'm going to end with this. Malcolm, Martin, Elijah, all these leaders, they have passed on. But the characteristics and the traits never leave human beings. So you have to remember, you must do greatness and even greater. You cannot look at them and feel like it stops with them. So that's what that's how I feel. I feel like I pick up the torch when it comes to that spirit and having the best interest of my people and representing my people. And what I mean by the ones who have been impoverished, who this plight and this illness have been put on. I have to represent that. That's what I come from. I come from communities like that. So it's an honor, but at the same time, it's my destiny and it's what I was born to do. And it took people who were born to see those things in people like me. So it's beautiful. And I don't look at myself. I look at the community around me that lifted me up.
Zoe Kennedy is the executive director of Force Detroit, one of 6 organizations that works with the city to reduce crime and keep neighborhoods safe. We were talking about the historic drop in homicide rates and violent crime in Detroit. Zoe, thank you so much for joining us on the Metro.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you.
Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. You just heard from Robin Vincent. I'm Tia Graham. Up next, a comedy venue in Hamtramck is putting Richard Nixon and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. together in a musical about the civil rights era. We'll be right back.
Stay with us. Welcome back to the Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent.
And I'm Tia Graham. And a butterfly, it flaps its wings and it can change an entire ecosystem. So too with humans. Our actions beget different actions, ultimately shaping history. The civil rights movement was achieved through social movement and protests, leading to housing and civil rights legislation, which have made the country more equal. But after the 1960s, Richard Nixon was elected. While he initially stood for things like a universal basic income and ending the military draft, Nixon became known for his bigotry and impeachment after wiretapping the Democratic Party's headquarters. Nixon's second election turned out to be a setback for the civil rights movement. As the country started to become less equal, especially along economic lines, subsequent presidents never finished the job of economic justice, which Martin Luther King Jr. and others working in social movements wanted to achieve. But what if things had been different? In the 1960s, Nixon had the opportunity to help Martin Luther King Jr. escape a potentially fatal jailing. He didn't, but what if he had? How would that have changed history? Would that have changed his priorities as president? Martin Luther King Jr. Day is coming up next month. Actually, it's coming up later this month to honor him. And Hamtramck's Planet Ant Theater is playing a dramedy musical. It's a fictional account of a meeting between Nixon and King in the Georgia prison. To talk about the musical Nixon King and the perceptions of these two figures, we have 2 guests with us here. We have Dylan Miroshalou, Am I right? Moroshula?
Mirasola.
Mirasola. Thank you so much. Dylan is the assistant director of Nixon King and one of the actors. And we have Itasha Walker, and she's also an actor in the show. Thank you both so much for being here on the Metro.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
Yes, and we're going to start with you, Dylan, because you are the assistant director. You're also acting in the play as well. So can you talk to us a little bit about being, number one, the assistant director, but then what character are you playing?
So yeah, I'd love to talk about it. Being assistant director has been a great experience. It's very fun. I'm working with the wonderful Jen Lee, who is the director of the production. It's been good. It poses a lot of challenges because the show not only is a dramedy and a musical, which has its own challenges, but it also has a little bit of sword fighting, a little bit of fight choreography. It's got it's a very exciting show. So juggling all of that and then also directing people around has been a really fun and rewarding experience over the past few months.
I mean, who doesn't love a sword fight? I love a sword fight. And, Dylan, just sticking with you as well, what character are you playing?
I play Duncan, the prison guard. So I have a less likable role, as you might imagine, from being in prison with Martin Luther King. So I take on that role. I have a song that I sing in it, and I kind of I'm kind of a bad guy in the show. But the story needs characters and it needs to be played, and so it's a good experience to do that as well.
Yeah, just channeling another perspective or trying to bring in that another narrative into that to the play, which we'll get into in a moment, because I definitely have a question about preparing for something like this because it's so unique in my mind. I'm trying to figure out like a dramedy, but also a musical. And I think about, of course, what we've had in the past few years, Hamilton, we've had the Mean Girls musical, but I'm trying to put this into perspective for those who are listening right now. So Itasha, let us know a little bit about what this story is.
Okay, well, this story basically takes place in the prison cell that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is in. And it's basically his struggles with morality. Like, what should he do in this situation with Nixon? And they had known each other for a really long time, so you would think their relationship would be stronger. And it's kind of their battle between each other and in the fight for human rights, and the question of what's more important in those human rights, whether it be like going to the moon or some other thing.
Yeah. And thinking about the story, Nixon, King, and of course, folks know about the Civil Rights Movement, Martin Luther King Jr., Richard Nixon. We know, bullet points, I guess you can say, about what was going on at that time. So why did you all decide to pull this particular very interesting moment in history out and kind of put a spotlight on it? We're going to start with you, Dylan. Like, why did you guys decide to pull this particular story out?
Well, actually, this is a project from a man named Robert Young. He's a local playwright in Detroit, and so this is kind of his passion project that he's done over. It's been a long time that he's personally had it and worked with people on it, and the Ant picked it up recently. Why specifically he chose that moment in time, I'm not 100% sure, and I don't want to speak on his behalf because, unfortunately, he couldn't make it today as he was busy. But I think if I had to say, it's probably because this moment is maybe the key that could have changed history and the direction that things moved, and exploring that reality of what would it look like if Nixon did come in, what would it look like if they worked together, and what challenges and what turbulations could have been avoided and stuff like that. I think that would be the reason why that was chosen, as this is probably the moment in history where history was made. And with our timeline, how it went is how it went.
Yes, I was going to say alternate timelines. I watched a lot of comic book stuff, so definitely thinking about just the reality that the world in which we would have lived in if we would have had more communication and more working together and equality during the Civil Rights Movement. But here we are on this timeline, like you said, Dylan. So, Itasha, being an actor in this particular play, and you're singing, and what character are you playing?
So, very exciting. I get to play Lucy. She is sort of like a symbol of temptation, and she's like wears this all red dress, and she has sort of a like devilish air about her, but she is meant to not only seduce Dr. King, but also to get him to give into a different kind of temptation because she wants him to kill Nixon. And so I get to like try to coax him into killing Nixon. I get to give him the swords to like try and kill him with. And I think that she is a very symbolic character. Like, she may not have actually existed in this time, but she gives off the metaphor and the symbolism of a character that would have come and approached him to maybe say some of these things to him and to further tempt him into committing this crime.
Yeah.
But that would ultimately, in her mind and in her thought process, save Black people and, you know, save the human rights.
Yeah. And, it'd be so interesting. I don't want to get too much into the story. It'd be so interesting if she actually kind of could see the future and she was trying to help him out.
So it's kind of implied, actually, that she can see into the future.
Yeah. See, I'm feeling it. I'm feeling what you're putting down right now. This seems like this is going to be really, really imaginative and really, really interesting and unique storytelling that's happening within this Nixon and King, which is premiering Friday at Planet Ant, actually. So Dylan, if you can talk a little bit about putting this whole thing together, what we can expect, especially as we come to this upcoming Friday. And then just a little bit about Martin Luther King Jr. Day and why you all are putting it together for Planet Ant.
Yeah. So putting it together specifically, just interesting because it came with a lot of challenges. Obviously, having a lot of different moving parts, working on a show that has other things like other specialties, like having like a musical director and like a fighting consultant and stuff like that, and working towards that stuff was really interesting. Moving towards Friday, obviously we open 8 p.m. at Planet Ant in Hamtramck. Is
Excited?
It's exciting. It's very exciting.
I can feel it off of both of you right now. You're so excited. How long have you been working on it?
Oh God, I'd say probably about 2 months in terms of like production stuff. Obviously, like I mentioned, Robert Young has been working on this for many, many, many years.
Yeah.
But yeah, working towards
2 months.
Yeah.
So, within that 2 months, once again, you're getting up to this Friday. It's at 8 p.m. We're going to see this whole thing come together. You talked about having a musical director. You also have a fighting coach, and you also have a regular director as well. So you have all these moving pieces. It's a small cast and crew, so you guys have a lot of heavy lifting to do on your own.
Yeah.
If we can just get into that as we get towards the end of this conversation, the heavy lifting that it took to actually put on a performance and portray such a heavy topic that is the civil rights movement, that is Richard Nixon and Martin Luther King Jr. These are huge figures, and there's big stories and topics and conversations to have. So can you talk about just number one, Friday night 8 p.m. the excitement that you both have, but then the importance of telling a story like this one, because it is an important story to tell, especially in the time that we're living in the United States of America today. So we're going to start with you, Aitaisha.
Yeah, it is a very important story to be telling, especially in this time. We are experiencing pretty much the same things as Black people. So I think it's really important for us to take a look back in our past in order to make notes and changes, and hopefully we can work differently than we used to. Obviously, that's a group effort, but I think it's still really exciting to be able to portray these characters and to sort of live in this time frame of the 60s. It sort of brings me specifically to my ancestors, and it like really enlightens me on a lot of hardships that we faced even throughout the rest of history, and like even before then. And it just emphasizes how much the fight is still going, and to be able to put on this performance and put on this musical for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day is kind of, it's fun. It's kind of beautiful to me. We get to honor a man who has changed history for the better, and around his birthday, and we get to celebrate it with him.
Exactly. Dylan, same question. 8 p.m. Friday night, opening night at the Hamtramck Planet Ant. And, some of those feelings you have there about telling this story.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's important. When I first saw the show, it definitely contains heavy themes because it's not a comedy, it's a dramedy, and there's more drama than there is comedy in it. And those heavy themes and making sure that we don't lose sight of the past. We don't censor the past. We put it up in front and be ugly about it and be like, this is the stuff that we lived with and this is the stuff that we went through, and making sure that those stories are told through and we have that correlation that we can look at now and say, is this happening again? Are we doing that again? And stuff like that. So I feel humbled to be able to give that sort of story and perspective on the world.
We had Dylan Marusala, the assistant director of Nixon King, and one of the actors in the program as well. We have Tasha Walker. She's also an actor in the show. I'm actually super excited about the show. Would love to have a place in the front row to watch this show. It's going to be amazing. Thank you both for joining us on the Metro.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
This is WDET-FM, Detroit Public Radio, your connection to news, music, and conversation.
Welcome back to the Metro, the second hour of the Metro to be exact, where we go deeper into pressing issues in our community. I'm Tia Graham.
And I'm Robin Vincent. It's a new year, a time when we often reflect on the things that we did well last year, our accomplishments, and also the things we want to get better at. It's an opportunity to improve upon ourselves. Maybe you want to work out more and hit the gym regularly, develop better work habits, maybe not procrastinate so much. That's something that never happens here on the Metro. Maybe you want to be kinder to others. This year, you could become a slightly different person even, a person with a different skill set, a person who is gentler and more generous to others, and importantly, to yourself. But becoming more like that person isn't an easy task. It takes practice and dedication and persistence. That kind of repetitive action we know as habits. Something that we do again and again and again until it feels like it's a part of us on a cellular level, until it feels like we would pretty much lose ourselves if we were not doing it anymore. But how do we get to that point? How do we establish good habits in the new year? And is that even a worthy goal?
We're going to speak with an expert who coaches people to develop better habits. But before we do that, we want to hear from you. What are your goals for 2025? What are your aims that you hold for yourself that keep coming up year after year? How do you finally make the change in your life? And do you want to learn a new language maybe? Or maybe you want to learn how to meditate a little more, maybe take some yoga classes? Or do you want to create better boundaries for yourself? We want to hear from you. Call us at 313-577-1019. And as we're taking your calls, we also want to talk with the show's producers a little bit about things they want to do this year and maybe some things they want to start to leave behind. So, Sam Corey, hello.
Hello. Tia Graham, how you doing?
Carrie Jr. II, hello.
Tia Graham, hello.
Welcome to the
Robin.
side of the... Hello. Right? Let's all just be awkward for a second. No, I'm kidding.
We're becoming more acquainted with this side of the microphone now.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right.
I just want to speak for all of us. I take issue, Robin, with that at the beginning, the procrastination point there. I heard you
do
over
you?
there.
I'm glad you heard that dig. I was looking around
I felt
and
the glare,
seemed
yeah.
like it seemed like everyone just let that sort of fly by them.
No,
So I'm oh, do you feel that you are now being attacked?
No, I think, I think I'm being rightfully called out, actually. I think I'm being rightfully called out on procrastination.
To all of Metro Detroit.
Yeah, truthfully. I mean, honestly, I think all of us procrastinate at some point.
Speak for yourself.
So you don't procrastinate?
Never.
Either? Okay.
I'm kidding. All the time. All the time. Who doesn't procrastinate? It's fun, right?
I mean, it's one of the things that I think everyone tries to kick at the top of the year, right? It's one of those habits everybody's like, I want to stop procrastinating. No. So
let's live on the edge, Carrie. Let's just do everything at the end of the
very last second.
Tia.
I can't do it.
So, Carrie, what are some goals that you hope to achieve in 2025? Other
so-
than procrastination.
We're done with Carrie. We can move on.
I was going to say that's kind of like exactly what I was going to say, but it's not procrastination per se. It's kind of a foundational skill that I want to develop. And I think it kind of speaks to a lot of different things that people want to do, but it's like establishing a routine and being disciplined about it, right? So it's not just about, I don't want to achieve like a skill or a goal necessarily, but I want to be like, I want to go through weeks and months being like, okay, I know every single day I have this stuff scheduled out for myself. And so there's just a lot of things I want to get done or get done more, like reading and writing and spending time with friends, and I just need to build it into my life a little bit better.
Adulting.
Organization, like
Pretty
organizing
much.
your life in a way that works for you.
Exactly. I think I got to be really, really, really specific about it, or else I kind of lose it and then I'm off the deep end.
In adult life, I feel like that's what you have to do, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's no way around that.
Thanks for calling me an adult, Sam. Appreciate it. Shouldn't you already be doing?
We're all here. No. I mean, we all I struggle with this too. I just think this is it's just like getting older. It's like, my plan is my religion. Like that's my Bible. That's my text.
On one end, I feel like I could just simplify things, but there are just more things I want to do, and I think I have to build the time in to do it if I want to do those things. So.
Indeed.
You said the right thing earlier, though, Carrie. It's discipline. Discipline will get you through, not inspiration or ambition. It's discipline.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So hopefully you'll feel less of that procrastination going forward.
My
There.
fingers are
I
crossed so
never
tightly.
noticed this, and now I'm gonna start like really.
You're not
noticing
kidding.
it.
You're
I
not kidding.
never noticed it. I never
No, I'm
knew.
not going to leave Carrie alone. Sam, what is something that you're trying to leave behind in 2024?
Yeah. Okay. So I have done a decent job of building in slow mornings into my life. What does that mean? It means waking up, being away from the phone, making some coffee, staring out the window, looking at the cats on my street, maybe meditating a little, preparing a little food for the day, that kind of thing, right? It's nice. It's slow. Maybe there's some nice music. All right. Okay. Very difficult for me to achieve this at night. I want to leave behind the internet, my phone, at least 30 minutes before bed. Because if I don't, it's just not as nice. It's just not as, I'm not as, I know we love the metaphor like charging your battery, but it's a nice, it's a kinder, gentler way to be with me so I can be more present with you all right now.
Oh, so sweet.
Please do this. Please adopt this. That's every night I pray, will Sam be more present with us tomorrow?
I don't know.
That's
We're in
the
a
goal.
sultry bar
That's
right
the
now
goal.
because Sam just hit us with some poetry. Robin.
Oh, hi to you, Graham.
Robin.
So I've built in the slow mornings, Sam, like you, and actually I want to encourage everyone to do the perfect day meditation, which I try to do every morning, where you envision what your life would feel and look like in a perfect day, and this is essentially building that life that you've always dreamed of, and it might be like 5 years from now, and it's like everything that you feel in that moment of that perfect day. Nighttime routine.
Yeah,
I
you're manifesting.
I'm
Is that
trying.
what that is?
I'm
that?
trying to. Yes, I'm trying to stir the witch's cauldron every morning. Yes, I need to do what you're doing though, and try for the evening shutdown as well. But something else I'm trying to do, and this is a recurring resolution of mine, is to stay better connected with friends and family, especially people who live far away. I feel like I'll get really good at being more communicative with folks, like via text and phone calls, and then I fall off. And I think I need to remember that even a text message, which is so easy and quick to send, that keeps the lines of communication open with people and lets them know that you're still thinking about them. Tia and I, we've talked about this. We're constantly talking to so many different people, and it drains our social battery. And when we leave the station, it's like, I don't want to talk to anybody else now.
I could be mute for 12 hours straight now. Like, seriously, quiet for 12 hours after doing the show, some especially by the end of the week. But if you are joining us on the Metro right now, we are speaking about what we're trying to do differently this year. As I mean the Metro team. We have Sam Corey, a producer on the show, Carrie Jr. II, Robin Vincent, and myself, Tia Graham. And for me,
yes, Tia.
What do you make of this whole exercise, Tia? What do you?
Why do you
Hold on.
What do you make? What do you make of what we're doing here?
Wait, because first and foremost, I feel like I was put on the spot. I'm like, wait a minute. Are you talking about the gym again, Sam? Wait a minute. No. But this whole exercise in terms of what we're talking about, like New Year's resolutions, I like the idea of the hopefulness that people have because it's the new year. We have new things are happening. So let's be hopeful about change. I love that. I'm not a huge fan of the resolution idea itself because you can choose to change yourself any time of the year. And that's my idea about it. So for me in 2025, do I have a goal or a big thing? No, I just want to continue to try to be the best version of myself. And that
it's an ongoing challenge every day, all day in Tia
day.
Graham's world.
I mean, all the time, Rob. It's a challenge all the time. So just trying to maintain every single day. That's my goal. That's my goal.
I want to go back really quickly to Robin. Your point about dreaming about what your perfect life would be. I think that's a really great one that I try to do, except I'll dream about being in this beautiful home with open windows and tall ceilings, and I'll look up and the ceiling's like right above my head. And I'm like, oh man, okay, I'm still back in my apartment. Still here.
You already see yourself in that place. You're there already.
That's
At one
right.
point in the future, it's just you haven't made it there yet.
We'll see. I have
you're
plans.
there.
Maybe there's like a dog in that dream too. I don't know.
You want a dog?
Yeah.
You're a dog person. Okay.
Vision.
Yeah.
Start that.
I wouldn't say I'm a dog person, but we don't have to go down that road.
Oh, I was going to say, because we can go long down that road.
We will. We'll do that one day.
Maybe one day.
That's a goal of mine. 2025.
Sorry, that one.
Okay.
That one really got me. But no, we do have David Lyons, I don't know if David has time to jump on the mic and let us know some cool things that he's looking
Dave.
forward to. I'm hoping that he does because Dave, you have a big year ahead of you. So what are you looking forward to in 2025, or what are some things you want to leave behind in 2024? No matter what it is, we know you have a lot going on.
Such
Yep.
suspense. Well, Dave,
No, I know, and that's
on the
my fault,
microphone.
listeners. That's my fault because I definitely just randomly pulled Dave into the thing, and Dave's just like,
I'll speak for Dave. I've heard him say several times he wants to get back to the gym.
Yes.
Dave, and now I'm going to start making stuff up.
I want to go to the gym, but I don't have time for the gym, so I need to get to the basement because that's where I'm going to work out now.
home.
I got a kid, and I got another kid coming, so I don't have time to go to the gym. My resolution for the year is to pick up on some of the old ones. My number one, the one that sticks at the top of my list every year, is to put the end in cynicism for myself. So don't be cynical. Anytime I'm being cynical or even thinking like it, I try and remind myself of that. I've been toasting to the end of cynicism for probably a decade now. So that's my number one at the top. And then the other one's like spend more time with certain people in my life that I don't spend enough time with.
We're a couple days into January here, Dave. I've noticed you're not so cynical right now. You're turning the bad into a good.
You're
flipping it.
I didn't even know this
He's been
about you, Dave,
Yeah, I didn't
that you
think
were
of you were
cynical.
cynical.
I'm not. I just am always trying to be less cynical.
I've noticed the change.
Yes.
All right, I am. Sometimes I can be, but hey, we work in news. We have to actively work against that.
right.
I'm curious to know what our listeners have to say for their New Year's resolution, or if they even buy into them. Like, because Tia, I'm kind of with you. I try and just work on these things every day, but I do set a whole list of things that is all right. New Year, where am I at with my old list? Turns into a to-do list. That's what Sam has going. But I'm curious about what the listeners got.
It's 313-577-1019. We're looking for our listeners. 313-577-1019.
Stay with us here on the Metro. We'll be right back.
Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. I'm Tia Graham.
And I'm Robin Vincent. And right now we're discussing how to change ourselves in 2025, which is no easy task. Altering our behavior is difficult. We only have so much agency over our world. But we do have some amount of control. So the question becomes, how can we actually change our actions consistently? How do we establish good habits? And is that even a worthy goal? Would life be better without goals at all? Maybe. Does all that striving actually make us worse people to others? Do we become insufferable, more anxious, more tightly wound, a little meaner? To discuss all this, we have Andrea Spyros with us. She's a behavior design consultant with BD3 Solutions. That's an organization that leverages the ideas set forth by Professor B.J. Fogg in a book called Tiny Habits. Andrea works with Professor Fogg to help change people's habits. Andrea, welcome to the Metro.
Thank you for having me. I've been listening to your conversation, and I just have to say, I'm feeling y'all because I have slow mornings. I don't know, Sam, if that was you or Carrie, looking out the window, making a cup of coffee. Connection, Robin, I'm working on those habits too. I'm not going to go to the gym, but I am going to do some working out. And I am with you, Tia, about no resolutions. But I don't necessarily think goals are a bad thing. Like, goals is kind of a fuzzy word. What does that mean anyway? You have an aspiration or an outcome that you want. And I think it's in how you hold that and how clear it is, right? It can totally make you meaner if you got to have something and you're pushing and pushing and pushing, right? But goals can also help us grow, right? And it's really about who we become in the process of trying to attain that goal, right? And how we experience ourselves. And I think that's really the power of goals, is growing beyond, sitting on your couch, streaming the latest thing. They allow you to maybe gently or not so gently sometimes move beyond and grow.
So, Andrea, you're saying it's about how we frame the goals and how we're actually depicting them to ourselves and to others.
Exactly. Yes, how we hold them. Right? If we're holding them in kind of like the way you would cup water in your hand, right? You can't have a closed fist, right? Hold it so tightly. But you can't just be kind of limp. So if you hold it loosely, it's easier to get where you're going. But then the most important thing is putting the behaviors underneath them. So some people will say, I want to be, Ms. Dave, be less cynical, right? And he got the behavior underneath there, right? Because someone could say, be less cynical. And then what would that mean? They would just see themselves being cynical and think, oh, I failed. But what he did was make an actual action. Every time I catch a cynical thought, I will remind myself, I don't want to do that, or whatever he says to himself. That's a habit.
Right. And
that's a habit of mind.
And that would be, a tenet of cognitive behavioral therapy, right? Of changing our behaviors to align with what our goals are. I'm wondering when an action repetitively done, when it becomes a habit. Let's kind of sit on that for a moment.
I'm so glad you asked that question. I'm so glad you asked that question, because here's the thing. You've obviously heard repetition or frequency creates habits. There's actually no research behind that. And
did you say no research? Zero research?
There's one study that everyone quotes. And to get a little nerdy, it was a really small study. And it wasn't even designed to show that repetition caused habits to form. It just wanted to show that there was a correlation or an association. But, people don't always understand things in the way that scientists design them. But I will tell you what really creates habits, and this is BJ's work: emotions. Emotions create habits. And because emotions can create habits, it can help you design for the habits that you want.
Andrea, I have a quick question about the habit building, because there's something that I stood on for a long time in life. It's like, it takes 21 days to build a habit. So you're saying that's just not something that is true.
No, it's not. And that this thing, if we could just mind blow everyone for a little bit.
You just did mine.
We'll soothe yourself a little bit. We don't want to hurt you. But if we dispel that myth, because here's why that's problematic. First of all, it sets people up to endure behavior change. I got to do this for 21 days, right? And then when it doesn't, behavior change shouldn't be something you need to endure. And then if you don't do it, it becomes all about you, right? It's your personal failing or your moral failing. And that's never healthy, because we change best by feeling good. If we change best by feeling bad and beating ourselves up, we would have already had the thing that we wanted, right? Most people out there are just like, I didn't do that. What's wrong with me? And ultimately, helping yourself feel successful, that's maxim number 2 of BJ Fogg's behavior design. Help yourself feel successful. Help people feel successful. Turn it yourself. Help yourself feel successful. Then you'll end up experiencing more positive outcomes. And this is where the tiny habits method shines, where you basically do the ABCs. You find an anchor moment. That's something you already do, like flush the toilet or press your coffee maker on. And then you make a really tiny behavior that associates with that. So maybe you want to do a couple squats. Not 20, not 50, just like 2. And then you celebrate. And that's where the emotion comes in. You find something for yourself that makes you feel good. Like, yeah, I did that. Or woohoo, or I'm a rock star. But it has to be authentic, and you have to feel it inside. And then you put it all together. So after I press on the coffee maker, I will do 2 squats, and then I'll celebrate. And what happens is you're wiring for consistency and automaticity. And earlier we were talking about discipline, right? It's not necessarily discipline. It's consistency and automaticity. And that can make things really easy.
If you're just joining us, we're speaking with Andrea Spyros. She's a behavior design consultant with BD3 Solutions. We're discussing how to create good habits in the new year, and we want to hear from you. What are your goals for 2025? What are the behavior changes that you want to make for yourself but haven't been able to achieve yet? The number is 313-577-1019, and hopefully Andrea might be able to give you some assistance. We're going to head to the phone lines right now and head to chat with Tim in Troy. Tim, what's your resolution for this year?
Hey, thanks, Metro. I would say, well, Andrea really got me thinking, but my 2 were spend less time on the phone, and also if there's something on your heart and mind, like to say to someone, just say it. But that really got me thinking, how do you measure that? How do you kind of get that positive feedback to see you're not on your phone and you're being, you're saying what you mean and feel. So that really got me thinking about those, but I think those are still good intentions. I just want to say, go Lions, Jack Fox, don't let them put you in a box. Keep doing your thing. Thanks, guys.
All right, go Lions. But Andrea, just hearing from Tim just now, how do you measure those positive, reactions there as you're trying to build those goals?
Well, that's a great question. First of all, Tim, I want to really commend you on your wanting to, if something's on your heart and mind, to say it. That is really a truly worthy goal. And I would hope that if you said what you had to say, you would naturally have a positive feeling inside. And you don't need to measure the positive feeling. You just have to notice it and access it, because it's actually the way we reinforce ourselves, right? It's a way that if you feel good doing something and you notice it, then it says to the brain, like, do that again. And so you can also do it through what BJ Fogg calls celebration, right? That's the woohoo, the whatever that you will do that makes yourself feel good. Again, you don't have to measure it. You just have to do it right after you do your tiny behavior or whatever behavior you're doing that you want to reinforce, right? So you spoke on your heart, and then you hopefully have a good feeling, but you can also just be like, yeah, I did that. I did what I said I was going to do. That feels great. And then the stopping part, now there's tiny habits method is great for, it's really the best way to form habits fast that last. Stopping is a little challenging, but you can design for it. Phone is what we call phone, social media, all that stuff like that. That's a stopping habit. You can have to really play around with your curiosity and maybe make it harder to do. We call like the phone and all that stuff distractivities, right? The things we do when we don't want to do the things we have to do. And make those a little harder to do. You might need a little bit of creativity in terms of being really specific. Like if you're on your phone at night, right, you could plug your phone far away. You could get I know this is going to be, maybe some of your listeners know what this is. It's called an alarm clock. And it's this device that has all the numbers of your watch and tells the time and actually will ring and wake you up in the morning. And you could do that. I think they're still out there, maybe in some antique malls. Instead, you could plug your phone away in a different area. But if you're doing a stopping habit, there's some good news and some maybe better news, or is that each time you do it is a different habit. And so start with the easiest time, right? If nighttime's really hard to give up on your phone, think about, okay, I'm on my phone when I'm at a stoplight. Please don't do that. I put your phone on Do Not Disturb, put it, in the glove box or whatever. I'm on the phone when I get into work. Okay, maybe that's the easiest time. I don't have to have my phone there. I can turn it off. I can turn it on the side. Pick the easiest time for you to get off your phone, and then celebrate that, and then move on to the next.
The journey of 1,000 miles. It starts with one step, Andrea, right?
Exactly. And celebrating that.
Forgive me for jumping in, but I wonder if you could talk about how this fits into the broader model that you use, which is MAP, and that's motivation, ability, and prompt. Motivation is the drive to do something, but it's not always consistent or reliable, which is where ability and prompts come into play. So could you talk about those things and how they can help people to achieve goals like what we just heard from Tim and Troy?
Yes, I would love to talk about that. So that is actually, that's the FOG behavior model. And it's the model of behavior. And this is what it is. Behavior happens when three things come together at the same time: motivation, ability, and a prompt, right? So all behavior. And this is whether you like what you're doing, whether you don't like what you're doing, whether you like what someone else is doing, whether you don't like what someone else is doing. If it's happening, there's motivation, ability, and a prompt, right? And with the Tiny Habits method, so BJ figured out the Tiny Habits method from that model. And that's where you can make something so easy to do and give yourself a prompt, the after I part, and then you end up doing it and you wire it in with celebration. Here's the thing that most people forget. Well, they know that motivation fluctuates, but they still want to rely on it. And so let's say you went to the beach and we're surfing. Okay, I know there's a little bit of surfing over there, not too much. But if you went with your surfboard and there were no waves, you would just maybe walk along the beach, enjoy the scenery. But here's what you would not do. You wouldn't go oh, I suck. I'm not surfing right now. What's wrong with me? And yet in other areas of our lives, that's what people do. They don't do something and they're oh, I suck, because they don't have high motivation. And so if you can just pull back and harness the high motivation, so when you have high motivation, you do the hard things, and then leverage the low motivation by matching yourself with a really easy action, right? So you're harnessing high motivation, leveraging low, and when you do anything tiny, it makes it easier to do, or even just make it easier to do. And here's the other thing, is that most people solely rely on motivation. They think that's the biggest lever to pull, when really the other two are more effective. Make sure you have a good prompt, that's your reminder, and make sure it's easy to do. And once you go through those, you probably don't even need to address motivation. So I think that this is behavior design in glasses. You think about the world in terms of motivation, ability, and prompt, focusing on the prompt and the ability, and only if you need to at the end go to motivation.
Okay, yes, because, the fluctuating aspect of motivation is going to come into play. And then you need to give yourself rewards for doing a good job, right? What are examples of some of those rewards?
Well, we're really big fans of what we call celebration, which is something you do for yourself that makes you feel good. Now, it has to be immediately after you do the action, right? Immediately. This is not, I worked on that report, or I cleaned my garage, or I deleted 10 emails, and so now at the end of the week, I'm going to go out with my friends. That doesn't link to wire in habits. Great, go out with your friends more. So we're not going to tell people not to go out with their friends more, but that's not going to create a habit. And so if you can develop the skill, and it is a skill, of celebrating immediately after you do the hard thing or you do your habit, then it tells the brain to do that again. So there's a number of kinds of celebration. You can use a song, hum or think of a song. You could do a sound effect like woohoo. You can do a visualization, fireworks or bowing on a stage. You can just say to yourself, I did a good job, right? And you can also do what we call a statement about yourself. Like you delete all those emails and you can say to yourself, I'm becoming the type of person who
I'm brilliant.
Really is productive. Yes, I'm becoming the type of person who's brilliant. Those are really powerful for people. And the most important part is the feeling. And this is a self-reinforcement mechanism that gets you going. We can't always rely on outside people cheering us on. And that's really, we really want is agency for ourselves, right? Where we can keep ourselves going, where we can feel good about our lives and ourselves and experience ourselves as becoming the type of people that we want to be. Right? I'm becoming the type of person that's really productive. I'm becoming the type of person that really connects with their friends and family. I'm becoming the type of person that has a healthy evening routine, whatever that means to you, right? I'm becoming the type of person that looks up instead of looks down, right? And you do those in the moment, right? And think about how many moments, if we just celebrated a little bit more like little kids, our whole days transform, right? So this is a skill of self-reinforcement. You can think about it as a reward. But I really want you to know that the key to this is in the moment because emotions create habits.
Andrea,
and this is the way to create emotions.
Do you think that this could be a key to mitigating procrastination? You heard us talking about procrastination. You know, it's the root of all evil.
Well, you know, Nancy and I, my business partner, we met over untangling procrastination. So, and just FYI for your listeners and for y'all, we have a lot of free resources on our site that we just want to help people out there. We will even take you through a 5-day program, personally email coaching you on how to form habits fast. But yes, it can be. So first of all, with procrastination, be gentle with yourself because this is your way, your body's way, your brain's way of keeping yourself safe, right? And sometimes things are hard. And procrastination can be easy to say like, oh, I just put that off and I'm a bad person, right? You're not a bad person. You just put something off. And there's usually, like habits, emotion around it, right? There's emotion of dread. There's emotion of fear, a lot of things going on with that. But you can also kind of leverage the FOG behavior model and make things tinier, make them easier to do for yourself, and then get yourself started, right? A lot of times procrastination is simply because something's too hard or we're not addressing the emotions underneath it, right? And we tend to kind of push over it. And if you give me an example of procrastination, we can work on it.
If you're just joining us, we're speaking with Andrea Spyros. She's a behavior design consultant with BD3 Solutions. We're discussing how to create good habits in the new year, and we want to hear from you. What are your goals for 2025? What are the behavior changes that you want to make for yourself but haven't been able to achieve yet? The number is 313-577-1019. It's 313-577-1019, and hopefully Andrea might be able to give you some assistance. Now, what are some common problems, Andrea, people have with developing good, tiny habits? What are the issues they run into? And I mean small, very, very small habits. Like maybe I'm going to remember my gloves before I leave the house in the morning.
Yeah, so here's a great thing. That's really good because you want to be really specific. So first of all, I'd set yourself up for success. When do you need to get your gloves? Maybe put them by your keys, right? If there's no place to put them by your keys, maybe you put your keys in your gloves. So you're going to have there's a playful experimentation and a curiosity about this method, right? So there's not a one-size-fits-all. There's a framework, and then you get a little creative, you play and experiment. So ultimately, if you're really having trouble, and let's say you can't put those two things together, right? You can't put them in your coat because you don't wear that same coat every day. There's no space in your house to do that. But if you want to remember your gloves, then you might do what we call rehearsal. Right? So whatever your routine is, let's say you put on your coat, you grab your keys, and then you have to go someplace else for your gloves, which I would just really hope you could put them close together because that would solve that. Rehearse it. Pretend you put on your coat, you get your keys, and you go get your gloves. And then you do the celebration. You're like, good for me. I remember my gloves. My hands are going to really thank me. Right? Then you do it all over again. Right? Super quick. Like it just takes a minute to do it like 7 times. And celebrating each time. So coat, keys, gloves. Hands are going to thank me. And that usually helps you next time you go to do it. Remember to take your gloves. But ultimately with those things, I would set yourself up for success by changing your environment to make it more conducive for you to do it. Remember the ability part, to make it more conducive for you to do it, make it easier for you to do it.
So, how do you speak to someone, or how do you talk to someone, or how do you handle someone, I guess you can say, when they're focusing too much on their goals and getting things done, and it's too much of a production or a process that they're going through just to get these goals completed? So what do you tell those folks about putting too much pressure on themselves when they're trying to complete goals?
Well, this is me raising my hand as being one of those people in the past. And really it's individual, but I would say that I would have a conversation. Because all habits are behaviors, but not all behaviors are habits, right? So this is just a conversation. If I were coaching someone, I would just say, look, hands down, you want to reach these goals, but what the process is. Like, you can't get to joy in a journey of, pain and suffering, right? And even if you do, then you've had all this pain and suffering along the way. So maybe we can find a way to frame this where you're not identifying as the goal, right? You are not the goal. You are becoming the type of person who has achieved that goal. And maybe we can find a way to achieve that in a more joyful, harmonious way where you're not so beat down, where you're not feeling stress and tension. Because then no one can show up their best or even nice for when they're feeling so much pressure, right? Everything seems like annoying and people seem problematic. When if you can be in a better state of holding that goal loosely, you're more likely to get it, and you're more likely to have some enjoyment along the way.
Yeah. Andrea, we're going to go back to the phone lines right now. We have Kimber in Arizona. And Kimber, welcome to the Metro.
Hi.
Hi. And you have a different take on procrastination than a lot of other people. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I feel like, for years I've been saying procrastination is part of my process. And honestly, I don't know if people really get what I'm saying. But the thing is that when I'm not doing something, it's still getting done in a way. And I guess my new goal this year is to just keep that to myself so other people don't necessarily interpret what I'm doing as taking forever,
I actually do, Kimber, because just like I was joking earlier, I mean, procrastination is kind of my thing as well. I'm a last minute type of person, but I'm getting it done, and it's kind of happening in my own type of way. So, Kimber, I agree with that 100%. And I want to ask Andrea about that as well. Andrea, talk to us about folks like us.
I'm one of those people. Here's the thing: you are not procrastinating,
okay,
right? You are not procrastination is about emotions, and it's really, if you're procrastinating, you're probably having some emotion of dread or resistance or things like that. Just putting something off because there's a better time or place, or because you like to do it that way, that's not procrastination. And I'm that person. When I get stuck on writing, Nancy and I were writing a book, and when I got stuck on writing, I learned I take a nap. I lay on my couch and I take a nap, and all of a sudden the words start flowing through, right? To someone else that would look like procrastination. But that's not. That's my design of work, of how I get the information. And so, Kimber, for you, you're not procrastinating. This is your process. It is always going on in the back of your mind, and we have to get out of the front of our mind sometimes in order to get in the creative part of our mind. And so you are not procrastinating. Just, do what you're doing. Keep on doing it because you're good.
And once again, thinking about some of the things that you've been talking about this entire segment, Andrea, just writing things down, talking about the rehearsal and practicing and making sure that you are, those little things. Can you talk just a little bit about the gamifying of everything? Does the overscheduling or hyper-focus on actions take away from the openness and the exploratory nature that we may have in life when we try to gamify things?
Yeah. And we're not a fan of gamification.
No.
Right? Because the reward is too far away, right? We're bigger fans of self-reinforcement, right? If you can reinforce yourself for doing the things that you want to do, right? Help yourself do what you FOG maxim number 1, help people do what they want to do, help yourself do what you want to do. And so here's the thing, if gamifying works for you and that gets you going, great, right? But for most people, really, it's about doing things and helping yourself feel successful, because otherwise you're just kind of going through in a way that's not authentic to you, right? And I think most people, from listening to y'all and the people who call in, that all of y'all want to be more authentic and want to have more and be more of what you want and live happier, healthier lives.
How do we get back to that exploratory nature that we're talking about, that is in complete diametric opposition to the gamified life?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think the gamification arises out of that because as adults, adult learners are different. I'm not an expert in adult learners, but I do know this bit, that adult learners think that we should pick up every new skill very easily. And then when we don't do it in one go, like learn the piano, or that we're frustrated with ourselves. And so I think there's a practice, and there's certainly some habits you can match yourself with, right? To remind yourself, like, when I feel frustrated or when I feel like I'm pushing on something, these are a little bit harder habits to form because you have to be really in tune with yourself. I'm going to remind myself to think like a child. Or maybe you have a habit of looking at baby videos, right, to see how they laugh at stuff. Like they go to feed the dog, and all the food drops on the floor, and they get like 3 kernels in the dog bowl, and they're so proud, right? So you can have a habit and this would be a great, like if you're doing social media and you kind of don't want to, look at some baby videos. So after I go on social media, I'll look at some baby videos or puppy videos, right? Or the little baby elephant viral video that's playing around, right? To just kind of get that feeling embodied. And then you'll just have some habits to remind yourself, right? It's normal. It's normal to ebb and flow with our emotions and things like that. And so a little self-kindness and a lot of celebration is going to really help with that. The more you celebrate, I guarantee you will feel more playful and exploratory.
And last question, Andrea, 30 seconds. You discussed some of the things you're working on right now for the new year that are similar to the goals that the Metro team has. Could you talk more about some of those goals and how you personally plan to reach them?
I have some tiny habit recipes. After I wake up in the morning, I will decide who I'm going to text that day, friends, family, social, After I go to sleep at night, I will say one thing that I'm grateful for and one win that I had. Or after I'm not after I go to sleep, but after I put my head on the pillow, I'm going to say one thing I'm grateful for and one win from the day to remind myself of my successes. Because for me, it's about being a little more present and understanding and celebrating myself, right? Because there's a lot of stuff that goes on. I'm so grateful to be here. We have so many free resources. We're happy to take people through the 5-day program on our site. Personally coach y'all.
Andrea Spyros is a behavior design consultant with BD3 Solutions. Andrea, thank you so much for joining us on the Metro, and happy 2025.
Cheers.
Coming up, we'll continue hearing from you and talk with our producers about how they're trying to change their behavior in the coming year. If you want to tell us about the things you're trying to do differently in 2025, the number is 313-577-1019.
Welcome back to the Metro on WDET. I'm Tia Graham.
And I'm Robin Vincent. And right now we're discussing how to change ourselves in 2025. And we're doing that because making changes isn't easy. It's true that change happens all around us. Politics change, people's beliefs change, our values shift. But having the mindfulness to implement new behaviors in our daily lives is difficult. That's because, as we just learned, motivation alone can't get us all the way there. We have to think a little differently. We have producers Jack Philbrandt and Sam Corey here with us to sound off on that. Welcome back to this side of the show.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Jack, what did you learn from this conversation, if we're allowed to put you on the spot?
I honestly learned so much from this conversation because going in, I am a poo-pooer of New Year's resolutions, I will say. It's something that I'll create every year will not stick to, but now I actually feel like I have knowledge and a game plan to help me stick to my New Year's resolution, and then also understanding that if I don't, it's going to be okay. You can try again the next day and just keep going.
Just keep trying. I love that.
Wait, Jack, we were talking in the booth a little bit. You were talking about the emotional availability or emotional openness, emotional generosity that touched you.
Yeah, I think really what I've been hearing a lot from this conversation is people just wanting to connect more with the people around them, get off their phones and just be present and in the moment. And I think that's really one thing that I'm striving for too, is just to connect more with the people around me and in my actual physical space.
Sam, what about you? What were your takeaways from the conversation?
Wow, that is so beautiful. So yeah, my big takeaway is on the emotional aspect of of habits and behavior change. When we think about behavior change and we think about creating habits, doing repetitive actions differently, we focus on that repetition part, but we lose, or at least I never really acknowledged, the emotional aspect of this, being kind, being open, being generous with myself, and then hopefully with others, but certainly not associating myself with the negativity of not doing the action that I want to do or of doing the bad action, right? If what we tend to do, what I just learned was we associate ourselves so deeply with that negative action, and so then we never do the positive action. We never do the thing that we're trying to do, that we're aiming to achieve. And so that just emotional sort of availability, openness. Honestly, what it taught me was to have good habits, you need to do therapy. You need to have that emotional vulnerability with yourself, which is just I don't know. I'm wondering what y'all made of it though too.
Yeah, Robin, what did you learn?
The emotional aspect for me as well. I think that I tend to I don't focus enough on how it feels to engage in good habits and to try and build those routines. I just do them because I think that I should, but to actually just focus on how these things are making me feel, I think will help to bridge the gap when I'm not so sure I want to continue them. What about you, Tia?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking right now as you're saying that, does this feel good as I'm doing it, or do I not like this at all? Or, actually paying attention and taking stock into my feelings at that moment. I learned, once again, the emotional aspect to it all. And as well, learning the facts of it all. I mean, 21 days is a lie. Okay? It's a lie.
21 days. 21 days to build a habit is
devastating.
not. Yeah.
It was devastating
so
to my
interesting.
core. So just learning those little tidbits and tricks and trades, secrets there is really, really helpful. And we actually do have a caller. Carlos, how are you doing, Carlos in Redford? What's your resolution?
Actually, I have just a one-word mantra for the new year, which is intentionality. Just doing things more intentional when you actually get to doing them. It can be overwhelming when you want to do this, do that, and the other thing. But, for example, if you want to visit your parents more, just make sure when you do it that you're more intentional on the type of quality time you're spending, or, don't just do a drive-by, so to speak. If you, vacuum the living room, do it with intentionality, make those lines nice and straight, and then your brain will be happy. And a few other things I internalize is I kind of use a third-person approach when I need to know that I need to get stuff done. So instead of saying I need to do it, I say Carlos should. So I might say Carlos should work another 2 hours, as opposed to saying, man, I really need to work another couple hours. So just using that third person makes it sound like a friendly voice giving you advice, as opposed to yourself kind of beating yourself down. And then the last one would be just saying that you get to do something instead of you have to do something.
Yep.
Kind of like with Sam, if he has to change his kid's diaper, just say, well, I get to change my kid's diaper. Because you got a healthy baby who's, pooping. So if you look at things differently like that, you use that little third-person inner voice and just do things with intentionality, you'll have a better day, better year. Life will be good.
Carlos in Redford. Carlos, it's always great to hear from you. Hope you have a great 2025. Dave, I want to bring you into this conversation as well. We just heard about babies and diapers.
Yeah, I'm always grateful to change a diaper for a healthy baby. Honestly, the health of a child is like the number one thing to being able to get on with the rest of your day and focus on yourself. But yeah, one of my resolutions from last year that is carrying over is keep Cora healthy and happy. So that's maybe it's not a resolution, maybe it's just something to do as a parent. But for me, those are about the same thing.
That's really sweet.
It is really sweet.
Have you all thought about rewards? Like, have you thought about the kind of rewards you want to give yourself when you've done the thing that you're trying to do?
I give myself rewards for going to the gym regularly, and it's kind of a sad reward.
What's the reward?
I make myself a protein cookie.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
I can just see Robin
really
like pushing. I'm getting that protein cookie when I get home.
That's right.
I hope it doesn't have chocolate in it, but yeah.
No, right,
the
because
best
we
cookies
know
don't have them. Right.
Your most controversial opinion, and we're
controversial
gonna need you
and
to,
best raisins
Sam,
over
to
chocolate every
building,
day.
the door.
Right?
Is
yeah,
there,
the door for you to
just
leave.
One over
yeah,
there.
you're gonna
Okay,
leave
yeah,
yourself
is that
out.
it? All right.
Show yourself out, please. But we hear about all the things that we want to get into here on the Metro, especially New Year's resolutions. We're going to try to listen to what Andrea told us and hopefully move forward in a positive way. I don't think Nate wants to jump in here, but Nate, I hope you have a 2025 that you're proud of as well.
You know, I do. I've had a good 2024. Looking forward to an even better 2025. I don't do resolutions, so I don't have anything specific. But if I can keep this show sounding excellent and perfect, that is my resolution.
Nate, our trusted engineer.
Mic drop.
Perfect answer.
Nate.
Yes, indeed. Dave, the senior producer, was on the show. Sam Corey, as well as Jack Philbranch. We had Kerry Jr. II, and myself.
The Metro is a production of WDET, a listener-supported service of Wayne State University.
This is WDET-FM, Detroit Public Radio, your connection to news, music, and conversation. Have a great day.
See you tomorrow.